Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. We are here on a Sunday afternoon. I am joined with a good friend, Adam, and we're going to be discussing a bunch of stuff going on in the world of Palantir. Adam's got a bunch of research he wants to show us, talk through some of their government stuff, and give us his expectations for Q4 earnings that are coming up pretty soon. They're going to be here in 10 days, February 5th. Well, less than that, 7 days. So,
it's crazy. We're already there. January's come and gone. Life moves quick. That's good. I think we'll just jump straight into the expectations. They guided for, I think, 603. I think they're going to beat that 603 marker. I think we'll pull in around maybe 610, maybe go a little bit up to like 615. Anything more than that is, more than welcomed. I think for what we want, I think 610 is good enough. The usual Palantir, cautious, beat by a little bit, and the main thing really is going to be the guide. I think the guide's going to be the real important part of this. And obviously the customer count and the guide. I think that's going to be the two biggest things. And I'm expecting big things in the guide, especially on the commercial side.
Do you think Karp and Shyam have kind of been doing a lot of public appearances because they are excited about 2024, or how are you interpreting everything that's been going on publicly with them? And because I guess the question is, if they guide really low, it would seem weird given how arrogant they've been on public interviews, right?
Definitely. And I think it was with Sachin, who was on the show. He made a really good comment when I was listening. He said, it's pretty much time to put up or shut up. The world is going into chaos. The AI hype is here. You are the number one AI play. The government stuff, granted, it's kind of hard to get to because you have to go through all the politics, and it's not like they can walk into an office, get a contract, and get paid, next week and start doing. It's government. It just moves slow. So I think for the commercial side, he's 100% right on that. It's time to put up or shut up on that. And maybe we still don't really know what the true quote unquote pricing strategy is.
Right.
But if they're going to lock up and finish with the year with over 1,000 clients, that's where I think it's a fair number where we should be expecting the end of 2024 to be, ending the year with 1,000 clients, because that would be pretty much like 650, give or take a couple from here on out, which I think is pretty good with all the boot camps that they do, the numbers that they do. Are they going to convert 75, 80% on each boot camp? That I don't know. But if they can convert, 30% or whatever, I think that's pretty damn good.
Do you think commercial will get to 25% growth this year? Or how are you thinking of it? Because I think it's going to be conservatively 22, 23, and then maybe 25 in the mid-year. But if they come out of the gate with 25, that's incredible. If they come out with 20, that's like, all right, well, what's going on?
See, the only thing that gives me pause on that question is going back to your first point with Karp and his $60 billion comment. If I'm supposed to take $60 billion at that's the figure that gets you, quote unquote, you're a player at the table.
Right.
Does that mean he's not considering himself and Palantir a player at the table? Or is that what he's considering what they need to do to be, a Wall Street game, player at the table? Because I think they are considered a player at the table, but they're not competing with Microsoft and Alphabet, especially in market cap.
Yeah, I think the comments were really interesting because when he said that, it was kind of, I think the lawyers got a little upset, but he was just like, screw it. We're going to be big, and you guys can't underplay us. And he also said any one of the 5 products we made would be a top 5 startup in Germany, right? And so from that perspective, I think they've got a lot of stuff cooking under the books, and we'll see what ends up going from there. Last question on earnings: do you think they're going to speak more about defense and Israel and government stuff? Government passed $886 billion in defense. Do you think they'll get a little specific on that, or still kind of keep it under wraps?
It's probably going to be their typical. I don't think they're going to come out of their way and say some, mind-blowing thing on working with, the Air Force. I think they'll say their, usual piece and working with, Ukraine, Israel. I think, when we read the 10Q, they might give a little bit more detail into that.
Mhm.
I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing more chatter of them in Indo-Pacific, in Asia, Taiwan. We start seeing more stuff like that go down. The defense side, it's going to be a really crazy world in the next. Well, it already is a crazy world. It's going to be a really, really crazy world in the next couple months with the United States election heating up. That's obviously a massive, massive influence all over the globe. There's tons of elections all over the globe, but right now, and a couple of minutes ago, I think like right before we started, 15 minutes ago, Biden just said they're going to retaliate. And what I'm referencing is there was a couple hours ago, it's pretty new, and this is Palantir is going to be right at the heart of this kind of stuff. So that's why it's important to talk about. U.S. Army base in Jordan, they got attacked by an Iranian-backed militia. 3 service members died. I think they said 25 or 34, I'm forgetting the number, are getting treated for brain traumatic injuries. And, I'm not going to try and get this all political, but as it relates to being a commander in chief and being the leader of our armed forces since October, I think it was 18th or 8th. Either way, it's not that far different from October 7th. U.S. forces have been attacked 180 times.
Right.
And, we're going into the Gulf of Aden and handling the Houthis and whatnot, but this is different. We're getting our bases are getting attacked. And now we finally have, unfortunately, we have, casualties. And we also have the 2 Navy SEALs that died lost at sea. That was going on because of what's going on over there with the Houthis. They were trying to get onto a ship, and, one guy didn't make it. Protocol, you jump in and go after him, and now you lost 2 guys. So Biden said they're going to retaliate. This was like 15, 20 minutes ago. So like right before we started. So depending on what they retaliate and where they retaliate, and in history, usually starting a war is good for an incumbent, especially the president of the United States.
Yeah.
Are they going to hit inside of Iran? That's really the main thing, because if they're going to hit back a target in Syria, you're just continuing the proxy war. And I don't think they're going to hit Iran tonight or anywhere in there. And I would have no information on that anyway. But they're going to retaliate. And at the end of the day, it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually this conflict is going to just explode in one way or another. And it's kind of what they wanted. We took the bait. Israel did what they did. We're getting attacked. We're not pushing back. And the reason why I think what's important to talk about this is Palantir's whole main mission, forget the commercial side, for 20 years was all about national security, defense, protecting the warfighter, enhancing the warfighter, getting the intelligence community the most important, sophisticated tools. And it's sitting on the sidelines. And, they're able to prevent, they're able to see what's going on. And, they have the ability to shoot out missiles and whatnot, but not all of them, obviously. And this one got through, and this one left people dead. So it's going to get a little crazy out there. So what do they do now? And not the executive branch, but the Department of the Defense. What are they going to do? And because I want to talk about Shyam's post on JATC today. They're going into, let's just call it year 3, I think, year 3 of the Russia-Ukraine war. We're talking about a war that people thought would have been over in a week. Russia had tanks in Kiev day 1. They thought they would get the bill. They thought they would get it, and they didn't. Here we are 2 years later, going on 3, and it's going. Now you have Israel, Hamas. Palantir playing a significant role in both of them. But just on the Ukraine front, that's a smaller army going up against arguably the 2nd or 3rd best army in the world, and they're still holding their own. And Palantir is a major part of that. So what is the Department of the Defense going to do now if you see this conflict in the Middle East spiral out of control? What are you going to do if something does happen in China and Taiwan and the South, or just in the South China Sea in general? And Palantir is there 24/7, 365, being used every day to either send an unmanned, Reaper drone or help a fighter pilot or a soldier on the ground, they're gonna give them more money, in my opinion. And we don't want World War III. We don't want all these stuff to pour out of control. But there's a lot of stuff that the DoD that we've spoken about is talking about monitoring, modernization, digitization, and if the world's going to go into a full blown out conflict, and the U.S. has moved nuclear weapons into the UK for the first time in 15 years the other week, like, it is getting very scary out there. And NATO is doing live drills for the first time that they haven't done in 50 years. North Korea tested another missile this morning. I'm like, that's anything new, but it's getting crazy. But the reason why I wanted to bring up Shyam's tweet and JADC2 Day, and I think we'll spend a little bit minute on JADC2 to explain like I'm five.
And Shyam's tweet, you're talking about the open source software one, right?
No, this one's from January 25th, and it says, yes, so close to doing the right thing. The first is cooking.
Gotcha. Okay.
If you want to pull that one up. But the spend on software rounds down to zero. 0.015% of the U.S. Army budget is spent on command and control software. 0.2% of the Department of the Defense budget. So the Army budget is in the Department of the Defense budget. So keep that in mind. 0.2% of the DoD budget is spent on AI. That is Palantir telling us right from the second dude in command, it is coming. You just have to hold tight. This number, this 0.2, is eventually going to be turned into 2, and then 3, and then 5. And Palantir is going to be a main beneficiary of this increase in spend. And the main thing that happened is, in my opinion, is they've realized they don't have time anymore. It's done.
Right.
They see, with all this conflict going over the world, with not just the military and the defense portion of it, and I'm talking about stationing troops and being in the Middle East. I'm talking about protests in London and in Germany and in Italy and in the United States. Like, things are getting very, very scary out there. And luckily for social media, that makes the intelligence community a little bit easier, because these people post it online. So you're able to kind of track them down and see where they're heading. But they need to spend more of it on software, on AI, and Palantir is going to be the main beneficiary of this. Now, here's the main thing. Later this year, and I believe it was at the end of March last year, it'll probably be around the same time this year, they do like a forecast budget of what they think the 2025 budget will be. And they'll do that. If they forecast 0.2 to, let's just make it a nice fat 1.1%, so a full 0.8, which is more than double, that's a big, thing. I understand at the end of the day, and I saw this somewhere when I was reading, that they were spending $20 billion on one artillery shell for a tank.
Right.
That's one piece of ammo. Software is ammo. And that's really what Karp and the Palantir team is telling them, is like, you cannot falter on our systems. And it's the backbone of everything that powers it. So that dollar is going to be the main thing. And that JADC2 Day, and this coincides with, I believe, why Titan was delayed, is they take the $1.8 billion that was allocated for JADC2 for 2024. They came to this industry day. I'm assuming Shyam was there. If not Shyam, Aki John, some of the other Palantir folks who have high-level security clearances. Mm-hmm. And they probably sat in a room and they said, all right, we're going to spend $200 million on the ABMS for the Air Force this year. We're going to spend $600 million on, Project Convergence or Project Overmatch for the Navy, or whatever it might be. But there's also a part in there where they're saying, we got to make sure our software and our systems and our AI is top dog. And that's really what this is going to be. And that's why that tweet was so important. And on that day, because I got excited because it was specific to that day, because this is what they were talking about. They were talking about the distribution of the money for JADC2, and that's going to include Titan. So, I think Titan's going to come at the end of March. It might even spill over into April. We're already in that Q2 timeframe at that point, because there is one exercise going on. I don't know if it's exactly Titan related, but it ends on like March 20th or March 23rd. So I wouldn't be surprised, but Titan's definitely coming. I'm pretty convinced it's going to be Palantir's, obviously.
And Titan's 1.5 billion for 5 years, right?
It might be more than that. I don't really know the exact figure. We're going to have to see, because if they're this serious about it, and if they're running out of time, they might spend more money to get this stuff off the ground. And, it's going to be interesting. But just to do a little explain like I'm 5 with JADC2, just for some people that are out there that are confused. So basically, it's the Department of Defense. They have one giant vision where the Army, the Navy, and Space Force, as well as, I might as well just pull up my little picture before I forget. Yep. So you have the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, and everyone within the Department of Defense. They're going to be basically using a system that is one platform, and that's the main thing. And that's the tech stack, the defense stack that Palantir is building, and they'll all be using Palantir, Gotham, and they'll be able to build applications on top of Gotham specific for certain missions and departments and whatnot. So that's really just the very, very basic of JADC2. It's just to have the entire Department of Defense on one system.
Now let me ask you this question. On Monday, and this goes into the stuff you're talking about JADC2 and government. Monday, Wall Street Journal came out with an article that basically said Palantir's government business is threatened. Vendors want open source software. Government wants open source software, so vendors like Booz Allen Hamilton and Deloitte can give it to them, and they want it to be cheaper. And then Shyam posted a tweet right before that article came out, a day before. He obviously knew the article was coming out, and basically shitted on open source, providers, and basically said these are just lawyers that are trying to charge you for billable hours. It's not real software, and you're wasting U.S. taxpayer money, even if you're in a ton of debt. That's not the right way to go about it. You've been on my channel many times saying that the government business or the government pie is expanding, and even if the CAGR isn't 10 or 20% in the short term, give it 10 years, there's a lot of money being spent in defense. Do you still feel the same, that Wall Street Journal article really is taking a very short-term look at the government business, and how would you kind of respond to that article itself?
They are very short-sighted. I mean, I can understand where they're coming from on a call it, since they became public to this exact moment in time in history. What is it, January 28th? Okay, I get it. You can kind of say it. The government business did decrease at a certain point, and it did. And one of the reasons why Kathy Wood got out, which was very stupid, and now she's back in, and the government business is the moat. It's the foundation of this company. And
it did grow, just the rate of growth declined.
Correct. Right? And it's gonna, and that's the lumpiness that Karp and them have all said before. Yeah. And exactly with that Shyam tweet we showed, as that number increases, the more dollars they're going to get. Remember, that $250 million AI ML that they got for JADC2 is for 3 years. Now, they're going to get more of those, and they're going to get bigger, and the contract length is going to get longer, I would imagine. And it's fine that the government doesn't want to be stuck to one vendor. It makes perfect sense, especially as a taxpayer. This one company goes down, or a couple significant players in the company go down, or they leave, and it's like, then they're stuck, and it just, I get that. It makes sense not to be stuck. But the main, I'll use one of the Palantir terms right now, that they build the software with is their interoperability. And it's precisely for that reason. It's like exactly having, and I don't know if this is going to work. I'm not a true techie, but this is kind of how it works in my mind. Have Palantir and just figure, quote unquote, that Gotham is their version of the App Store.
Right.
And then you're the developer, and you created some, drone, imagery, software application. You integrate it onto the App Store, and you, as the Department of the Defense, you have access to it. You can download it, you can use it, but you can't change its code. You can't really go in there and see what they wrote. Like, you're just a user of it. And I think that's the part that Palantir is trying to say to them, because I think I read that they want the IP and they want the code. Like, that's never going to happen. Like, people aren't going to want to give it up. So this is how they built it, and it's going to work because they're going to have the software application designed for this specific product and this specific, mission and this need. And if they don't need it anymore, they're able to delete it. And, it's very easy to scale, and it's very easy to deploy, and it's very easy to take rid of if need be. That's the beauty of it. And, one of the good ways that we can kind of look at it, and this is going to be a really, interesting one, is someone that I was talking with about it, is all volunteers with a lot of the no-name players, they're going to start paying off, because when I was talking to someone, Calypso AI has a partnership with Lockheed.
Right.
And, that Lockheed partnership with Calypso AI is, going to be centered around, Palantir, I'm going to assume.
Calypso is a partner with FedStart as well for Palantir.
Correct. It's really interesting to see how they're taking this approach with helping the government out with their Project Vista by their answer with FedStart. So, hey, this company does X, Y, and Z. They passed through FedStart, and now you have arguably the biggest defense contractor in the world working with them. So it's really amazing to see these little connections. And, I just do want to say this on a point of just for people to understand how big the pie is, and when Karp says about the pie, I think I could be wrong on this. I think Lockheed reported this last quarter of $19 billion in revenue. They aren't selling F-16s to JP Morgan.
Yeah.
I didn't see Jamie Dimon order one and buy one. So there is plenty of money in the DoD. They just have to get this JADC2 vision. They have to win Titan, and it's going to come. And they have to get the government to spend more. They're very good at spending. They're just very bad at spending properly.
Right. Okay, so your argument on this whole government spending issue is just that there is plenty of pie. It's just going to take a little time for it to play out, for that pie to get bigger.
Yep, it's just going to take time. And a lot of it is going to come to fruition, I believe it or not, this year and into next year. Once we win Titan, that's really going to be okay, the door has been open and we have stepped through. And that's really going to be the time that we go to the next level. But a lot of these, these projects, and if you remember, a lot of these contracts that they got, they were signed in 2019. They were a lot of 3-4 year deals that they got in 2019, especially with the Space Force and stuff. All those are going to come up, and they're going to get new money, and they're going to be bigger and larger. So it's going to come. And, a lot of the stuff is obviously unknown. As I say a lot, it's a lot of it is classified. They're never going to talk about it. I tweeted it, Shyam on JADC2 Day because I'm that stupid and I had to. But I'm like, there's a project called Rainmaker, which is basically a targeting. Oh, let me read it real quickly. A low-key Army project known as Rainmaker is quietly developing common standards to let combat networks share data from everything from targeting smart weapons to training AIs. And there's only 2 articles really about this thing, and one was in 2020 and the other was in 2021 that said they're going to deploy it in 2023. So. Right. And if you remember that JADC2 image of that they have a data fabric. It's one of the main thing in Nexus peering, and now you have this thing called Rainmaker, and now it's potentially called Gabriel Nimbus. Like whoever thinks of these names. So it's a lot of the stuff's going to start coming to fruition now, and we saw this, and a lot of us, including myself, and I'm very disappointed in myself, when and David Mara, the head mixed reality service gentleman over at Palantir, posted this weekend the video of Exercise Brave Partner, and it might even be worth showing it. It's very quick. It's only 45 seconds.
Yeah. Oh, but I think it's the one with the music in the background and all that stuff.
And it has the headset.
Yeah, let me pull that up. Yeah.
So while he pulls that up, it's this came out in December, and this came out on the Department of Defense's own website. So
let's play this video and then we'll transition to mixed reality, and I'll get a bunch of your thoughts on where you see that world going. So let's pull that up right now. Here is the video DoD posted.
We're here as part of exercise Brave Partner, where we deployed the tactical command post of the 2nd Cavalry Regiment here to North Macedonia. This technology, TMDP, the Tactical Mission Data Platform, allows us to rapidly scale our command post larger or smaller depending on the mission and maintain situational awareness for decision makers.
What's been really cool has been
getting to
we operate in theater with in-theater assets while also testing out all this new technology, being able to demonstrate these capabilities to our partners as well.
And there was Palantir right there.
Yep.
This is pretty cool. So can you give me a high-level overview on why Palantir is doing mixed reality and why isn't Microsoft or Apple kind of getting into this business, given their Vision Pro and all that?
First, I might need to grab a Kleenex real quickly every time that video. God damn, it's so perfect.
Pretty awesome. Pretty cool.
It is great, and you know, I think the best part about this, in all honesty, before I comment on it, was the fact that it was an employee who brought it to our attention, because throughout all the research that gets done through the Palantir community, there's so much stuff that that doesn't get seen, and this was clearly one. And the fact that it was so important and such a big one that all of us were like, oh my God. Like, and they were like, they probably looked at us. They were like, how did no one find this yet? And they were like, just post it for them.
When was this posted? This
December 6th, I believe.
Oh, wow.
December 6th. So I was very pissed when I saw that. I was like, this fucking guy.
Dude, before Christmas, we would have ate this up, all of us in the community. We would have been so, yeah. It's
correct. Awesome. So we all missed it. And it happens. And that's the problem. And that's how large the pie is. So just to talk on Microsoft, for example, as it relates to this. And I remember a couple of weeks ago, they put out their, HoloLens, and it was a commercial product for their, virtual reality, mixed reality. And it was mind-blowing good. Will it work as good as it looks? Now, that's the main thing. Sure it will, a commercial sense. And one of the interesting parts of that video was they showed basically a gentleman as if he was a mechanic looking at car parts. And the point is, with something like that for Palantir, take Skywise, now make that for the Air Force, and now take your little mixed reality set, boom. And now you're able to check every plane, all this stuff to make sure all these parts are done for the Air Force, to make sure all the maintenance is good, just like you would do for any Airbus plane. We don't need to talk about Boeing clearly having an issue right now.
Right.
So, for that, it's very, very important. It's a very big market for the Department of Defense. And that example that I just gave you, that's just some logistical, very small little portion of it. Is the nuts and bolts on the truck good? Is the, what I mean? Is the airbags installed correctly? So with Microsoft and HoloLens, they got money this year for another go round. They were originally awarded $21 billion. This was like 2-3 years ago. They have only truly received at the end of this year, if they do receive this full 530, they'll receive about a total of like 600, which is not a lot.
Right.
I mean, compared to overall Palantir revenue, 600 million is obviously a nice chunk of change to have. And it is for any company. But for Microsoft, they're working with the soldiers and they're trying to improve their systems, just like how you saw Palantir is working with soldiers on how to improve their systems. So they're improving it. I think what's going to happen, and I could be 100% wrong on this, obviously, is someone in this IVAS program is going to say, I've had enough. I want to open it up to multiple vendors, because they've already spoke about this to a degree. Mm-hmm. About if it not getting getting it to the pinnacle that it has to be, and opening it up to rebid to other vendors.
Right.
And I think that's what's going to happen. Is it might not happen this year, it might not happen next year, but they're not going to spend $22 billion on a product that has flaws or that the soldiers don't want to use versus something else. And if that's because of the way how the user interface interacts at night when they go to night, like it could be a million things. So, I think it's a very big market just from the defense side. This first thing that you saw on this video that I want to point out was the tactical mission data platform. So that's Palantir. So anytime you see stuff like that, you have to think of, okay, the platform is Palantir. So that right there, they're getting their foot in the door. They're testing it live. It's on the ground. Someone's using it. They're getting feedback on how to improve it, what they liked, what they didn't like. So it's going to go. Now, what I was good about, because I think last time I was on here, I complained and I bitched about them only having IC2 as the only application for this platform. Clearly, they had this as well. And, what I want to talk about to kind of transition into this whole universe of MOSA and why I think the DoD and Palantir captured this of being able to integrate and how we started of not being stuck to one vendor is on this new white paper. If you pull up the new mixed reality white paper,
let me pull it up right now.
And this is the kind of stuff that is so, the James Bond and so cool and so unknown, and it's really advanced, and it's way beyond my expertise, if you want to even call myself an expert in any way, shape, or form. But because
Adam, give me 1 sec. I just got to open the door for my dad downstairs because he forgot the key. I'll be back in like 2 seconds.
People, you're stuck with me. So for 2 minutes, I guess we'll talk about mixed reality. So the whole point of the MOSA, and you'll see it when Amit pulls up this document.
That was quick. That was literally 2 seconds. That wasn't bad.
That is pretty good.
That was quick. All right. So they posted this on their website, right? Because I saw it. I think someone sent it to me. Oh, here we go. I got it. Here we go. Yeah, this was really interesting. Over the weekend, I was reading a couple parts of this, and on Palantir Weekly, we were talking about this. So here we go. I believe this should be the one, right? Yes, this should be it.
Yep. So completely new and updated from the old one. If you go to the old one, it's very wordy. Not like this isn't wordy either, but this one has way more things straight to the point. Obviously, they have ontology straight on top, so they're really trying to throw that in your brain. But if you scroll down, and obviously they have the ontology software development kit in there, which is nice. But if you scroll down and if you zoom in, and right here, these 5 little things.
This is interesting.
So I'm going to go from the bottom up.
Okay.
That ENVGB. I posted when Palantir said they were going to have their first board meeting of this year in Israel. I said, tinfoil time. They're going to go to Israel and they're going to get something done with Elbit Systems. And Elbit Systems, if you ever go, and if you go to my Twitter, and this is another tremendous video that I recommend everyone watch. Elbit Systems has a thing called Iron Vision, and it's like a headset. You wear this thing, and basically, if you're inside a tank, you're able to see outside the world. So you know what's going on around you, and it has a lot of all these purposes. So like tinfoil was right that they were working with Elbit. This ENVGB is Elbit. So this just goes to show you that the connections, like I said before, with Calypso AI, Lockheed, it just takes time, and now everything's coming to blossom. So on here, this right here, you have Elbit right there, and I just pulled up my tweet just on ENVGB, just for people to understand exactly what it is they got $107 million, Elbit Systems. So they're going to spend some of that $107 million with Palantir to run it on their mixed reality service. It is $107 million for a supply of enhanced night vision goggle binocular systems. So now that they're getting integrated with Elbit, And this system, it's going to open up the door for a bunch of other things. So Net Warrior, obviously, you probably see Deep Value post about that a lot. Net Warrior is going to be really huge. And it really started with like radio and telecom. But now the fact that they're able to go in and use quote unquote a visual, it's really expanding to beyond that.
And all of this is the actual software in the device. They have no interest, Palantir, in making the hardware. They just have an interest of how that hardware is interpreted.
Correct. And that's like one of the crazy things of why they're able to have like an 82% operating margin or whatever it is they literally said 20 years ago, and they probably, and I'm sure someone comes into their office every year that says, we got to make it, just do it. And they probably say, go back to work. And they're 100% right, because if they had to worry about the hardware, then they have to worry about sourcing all this material. It's more cost, it's more labor, it's another whole division. They don't want to be bothered with it. They're going to create and they're going to deploy software that is so damn good that other companies are going to have no fucking choice but to just build on top of it.
So you kind of think like Microsoft and Palantir can kind of work together here in terms of HoloLens is the actual device.
Well, that's the interesting part about the IVIS thing right there. IVIS is HoloLens. And that thing is the biggest question mark, in my opinion, because HoloLens is Microsoft's, like, the physical hardware. Correct. That's what they call it. Correct. But the actual military DoD program is called IVIS, which is Integrated Visual Augmented System or something like that. So they're forecasting to us, and they're saying you can run IVIS on our mixed reality platform as a service. So to me,
it's kind of like Foundry, that's agnostic towards anything, right? It kind of just works.
Correct.
Yeah.
So to me, if that's what they're forecasting, and if that's what they truly are building, which I believe they have no reason to lie to us, that would be a complete fraud right there, is they're saying to the Department of the Defense, give IVIS to Microsoft, give Net Warrior to L3, give NVG, give it to Elbit. However, they're going to get the software component on top of Foundry, on top of Gotham. Right. And that is going to help them, provide a better, more impactful product at lower cost and higher scale. And more importantly, it's going to be easier for the Department of the Defense to integrate, deploy, scale, get rid of. So that one little image right there is really, really mind-blowing, just because IVIS is $22 billion. And like I said, if they're going to go to a multi-vendor, and if they're going to say to Palantir, we want you to be, the home of mixed reality for the Department of Defense,
how much is that worth, right?
They have 20 billion waiting in a safe that says for Microsoft IVIS, and here they're saying, IVIS can work for us.
Yeah, dude, that's really interesting. How long do you think Palantir has been thinking about mixed reality? Because I know Palmer Luckey started coming up with this stuff, almost 15 years ago, and then Zuck bought his company in 2014. Consumer applications of mixed reality aren't super mainstream yet, but I would imagine Palantir has been thinking about it on the defense base, because it's the next evolution of just being better on the battlefield without having to use your eyes, but use a device that can see more than your eyes.
I think they've been thinking about it for a while now, obviously with the patents. Obviously, if they filed for a patent in 2020, I'm just pulling that out of thin air, how long were they working on the software? I'm assuming it didn't take them 3 months. I'm assuming it might have taken them, 2-3 years, right. If that's what it was. So, I mean, I'm sure they were thinking about it for a long time. I'm sure they're also saying to themselves right now at the same level, how can we start getting the commercial clients to build on mixed reality service as well? I don't think they care as much about that for it. I think they care way more about the defense side. And if you recall, and in the grand scheme of things, Mara's a relatively new employee for them. I mean, he's only been there for 2 years?
Yeah.
So you got to imagine the first 3-6 months, he was kind of getting his feet wet, getting settled, getting it set up where he was able to build his team and staff and, overall product to where he wanted, probably took some time. And then they had to build it and test it out and try it. And right there with that video, that's the main thing. They don't care. They don't like, it's like hilarious what some people might think is like, they don't go to the park and try it on seeing like how it works, like during lunch. Like they're out there with the actual, lieutenants and commanders and with soldiers, and it's structured environment, simulated war of like, what do you think? And they'll tell them straight up, like, dude, I would have gotten killed 10 times wearing this fucking thing. Right. So, it's really important that they're out there getting feedback from the soldiers. And the fact that the soldiers like it, that's really, a main ingredient, because the soldiers with Ivis, they didn't like the first round. They liked the improved second round. Is it to the point where they want to wear it in, real live fire battle? I don't think so. If that was the case, they would have told Microsoft, here's $5 billion, give us, 10,000 headsets or whatever. Instead, they said, no, here's $530 million, make it better again. Like the technology, and also just looking at it from a structural standpoint, just Palantir's headset versus Microsoft's. And granted, I'm sure they are designed to do a little bit different things. Microsoft just seems clunky and heavy. Theirs seems kind of sleek and light. And, I think they're going in from a much different approach of like, all right, let someone else kind of figure out, night vision, live fire, battle, seeing around the corner through a smoke grenade. We'll worry about being able to, like what they're showing there, get the commanders, show everything what's going on, and let them have like a virtual meeting right now, and they'll work on it. And, with all that other stuff, it's going to lead to, all the crazy, James Bond kind of like infrared, laser sight, like all of it's going to lead to that eventually. So it's just building it, and everything is built on this defensive tech stack. And Shyam, that's the whole point of that post. He's telling you it's 0.2%. It's going to be more. They just had the first breakfast. So I imagine they got to have lunch eventually, dinner, dessert, and then they go to bed. So, it's just a matter of when and how long. And no one can tell you when that's going to be. Because if they spent $886 billion in 24, maybe they spend $900 billion in 25, right, but they spend $5 billion on AI. And that's a huge increase from where it is. You can't really, it's very hard to tell. And, the commercial side, I think is going to really, blossom this year, because I think the defense side is really structured and really, really strong. And I think once they win Titan, because I was doing a little bit of research of Palantir employees and whatnot, and because there's I don't know if I wouldn't call it army base or whatever, but there's a very a defense base. There's a lot of them in Alabama, but Huntsville is a major military hub. Yep. So I see a lot of, I always see Palantir, Alabama. Like it just makes sense.
Right.
But there's a new program that's going on, and a lot of it is with in Redstone. And I just saw like 2 or 3 Palantir employees specifically with Redstone as their location. So, and this is with the Air Force, if I'm not mistaken. So it's just like, it's funny to see how they branched out for defense geographically, and how they are branching out, regionally for commercial. It's like, yeah, we're going to spend 3 guys to Alabama, and then we're going to send this one guy. He's going to go to all these cities and all these different days, and he's going to manage all these boot camps. So from that perspective, it's interesting. Like I'm hoping the boot camp guys don't die on us in June, because they gotta make it another year.
Yeah, the boot camps have been incredibly interesting. I mean, we saw one in Chicago a couple of days ago. We got the India Accenture one that's happening. Obviously, there's probably some government boot camps going on, potentially in Alabama. What are your thoughts on Shyam doing a retail investor interview? He's never done that before. What is your general thoughts on Palantir allowing access in person to the retail community?
I will say this on Shyam interacting with the retail community and all the Palantir employees interacting with the retail community. I appreciate it and I am very thankful for it. You don't have to do it, especially when you are running a company as important and as mission focused as Palantir.
Yep.
In theory, you should be thinking about how am I protecting this world while taking a shit, not talking to us. So that is very appreciative. I will comment, out of all the people in the Palantir community, and I have said things about all of them along the way, and that's fair because everyone puts themselves out there, including myself. When I say A, you can come back at me and say B. I've been wrong on things. I've been right on things. It happens. We're not perfect. We're not experts. No one expects us to know everything. You are the only one that has been here since the very, very beginning and didn't leave and never turned on people. And that, I tip my hat off to you, because I'm sure in 2020 and in 2021, when the stock was, hype and good, everything was nice and dandy and everyone's watching. And then in 2022, when it was doom and gloom, and I'm sure it was very, very rough, and you still were out there day by day saying why I'm here, why I'm not selling. People may not agree or disagree with how you said it and what you did and why you did, but as it relates to Tomer, he is a cancer for this community. I will just say it at that. There is no reason to block people if you disagree with them. You are entitled to an opinion. Now, if you don't appreciate the way how someone is saying it and you feel harassed, now that's a different story. But just because someone disagrees with you, that I didn't like. And because of that, I kind of felt slighted that he picked him over you, because that was someone who has done, in my opinion, not as much as you have. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just happy they interacted with retail investors, and whoever they pick is whoever they pick. I hope they interact with more of us going into the future. But it was interesting to me saying that that they actually decided to do it. And the bearish case is that you interact with retail, and it's like that's a red flag. A lot of people say, because like, why are you interacting with retail? The bullish case is that, well, you actually want to expand, and I think that a lot of the employees are on Twitter now, and they're interacting with us every day, right? They're sending us links and all this stuff. And I think maybe the company is getting to the point where they're like, we think we're good enough where we don't have to be so scared to interact with our greatest marketing community, which are the evangelists of the stock. And maybe we can interact with them more. I mean, I see it with Tesla, right? Like the reason Elon loves these Tesla content creators is because it's marketing at the end of the day. And you need people to be interested in your company. Like if you have a public company, people have to care. And
well, I think the good news is from an investor standpoint, and if you're not an investor, just a follower of the company, being that the product is so complicated to understand.
Yeah.
And I will never understand the nitty-gritty nips and bolts of, okay, you got this API and it's connected to this server here, and then you got, like, I'm never going to get that to a true like coach drop standard. And I'm fine with that. But the fact that a guy like Pete, Chad, they're willing to come in and they're willing to answer questions for people.
Huge.
And they're not even doing it in like a way of like, hey, we need to get it's not even like they're coming out like as salespeople. They're coming out as like, hey, we work for the company. We understand you have an issue, and we understand from an investor, we're looking at, okay, these companies have issues and Palantir solves them, and this is how, and we don't always kind of get it. I like how they come in and they say, and Pete did that with one of my tweets today, as a matter of fact, because I tweeted today because I tweeted the other day about an article about Palantir's security, which if you haven't read, it's very, very interesting read. But this patent came out in 2022, and it's all about the network getting attacked. So basically, if you try to attack the network knows it's being attacked like a human, and it sends alerts and it lets people know, and it goes into defense mode. So that's the other reason why Palantir also has the nuclear contract, is because they understand cybersecurity is so important. They're not trying to go in there and say, hey, we're CrowdStrike, we're going to sell you cybersecurity software.
Right.
They're trying to say, use our platform, because if someone tries to get your data, they can't.
Right.
So, it's really nice to see that they come in, they interact, they explain the product, because I'm sure that there's certain executives in companies all over the world, whether they're in the United States, whether they're in Europe, whether they're in South Korea, that they are following Palantir and Palantir related accounts, and they're learning along the way, because now the employees are interacting, they're seeing them. So now they're following.
But here's the question. Do you think the employees started interacting, I would say really the last 5 months, because you think the company has kind of given them the freedom to, like, because I'm sure like a year ago when the stock was in the gutter, you don't want your employees out there on social media because you're just so scared. You're worried about Wall Street, all that stuff. Once the stock, goes up 160% and the company gets a little bit more secure, gap profitable, that stuff, do you think then the company was like, hey, you guys are kind of allowed to be more free because we don't have Wall Street breathing down our neck?
I think they definitely said the chains are off. You can have a little bit more freedom.
Yeah.
I'm sure they have very strict protocol. I'm sure they tell them no, and I'm sure they follow it, because we don't see my day as a Palantir employee. You don't see any Facebook and TikTok videos of those.
Yeah.
So
and you don't see them talk about the stock ever. They're talking about product. They're not talking about stock price.
That's the main thing with Palantir as a company, is they're so mission driven and they're so big on culture. And I think this actually kind of helps them to a degree, and it might hurt them in the coming months. And I don't know, because if they're going to grow as fast as we hope, and if they're going to capture, an additional 600 clients this year, or what happens if they capture an additional 800, or what if they capture a full 1,000 clients this year? They're going to have to, get bodies, but not everybody's going to want to work for Palantir.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But I'm going to assume that the person with the normal head on their shoulders, they're going to take an interview with Palantir, and they're going to say, if they don't know about the company, they're going to say, let me take the interview, let me learn a little bit more about them. And that might turn them on, and they'll say, you know what, screw it, I'll go through the next round of interviews and see. And they might find great talent. I also think they're kind of stuck because they're looking for such significant, smart people. And now, and this is just something that is complete speculation right off my brain, because this is how my brain thinks. They were very specific. Like, usually, they're hiring from Stanford, Yale, MIT, ex-military. Now you can hear Ted in the background. Wonderful. So now that Stanford is not the same school it was 3 years ago, and these Ivy League schools, and Karp has changed his tone.
Yeah.
And he said in recent presentations, I don't care if you go to Stanford or University of Colorado or Colorado Community College, we're going to give you the same, and you have to deliver the same.
Yeah.
Are they going to be, and Stanford particularly is a college and university that prides itself on defense history. We're now not going that route. And they're Stanford alum, Karp, Thiel, Lonsdale. This is where,
Silicon Valley started for the defense sector before it became consumer oriented. So
correct.
Stanford was at the heart of that. Yeah.
So are they now going to say, oh, wonderful, we have an applicant from Harvard? Are they going to be like, or are they going to be like, all right, automatic? Like, it's going to be very, very interesting. I'm going to assume they're going to push very hard more for ex-military people. That's my opinion.
I went to Rutgers, New Brunswick, which is a state school in Jersey, and I went on LinkedIn the other day, and one of my, not friends, but someone I knew from Rutgers got a job at Palantir. And I was actually very surprised, because Rutgers, it's no Harvard. I think Rutgers has a phenomenal computer science program, and it's a good state school, but it's not.
No, it's a very good school. I know people that went to Rutgers. Rutgers, Syracuse. So fuck you and your basketball program right now. But
I thought you were Penn State for a second. Oh, now we got to end the podcast. But
no, definitely not.
But the fact that he got a job, I was really interested in that. So yeah, I do think things are going to change. I think the sentiment we've seen around how the universities have reacted to the Israel attack is. Been very interesting, which segues into this conversation. How did you feel that Karp put the whole board, the first board meeting in Tel Aviv? What were your thoughts on that?
Well, if you remember, the last time I was on here, I said I want to see more Thiel. And literally next week, we get Thiel. And maybe that's it. Maybe that was our Thiel appearance for the year. I asked for one appearance. He showed his face in Israel. He shook the guy's hand. I guess I'm not allowed to complain. You can hold me accountable for that. If I make a tweet you can call me out. You could say, shut the fuck up. You had your one appearance. It doesn't matter that it was January 3rd or whatever. So I'll be happy with that. I think, and it goes back to my tinfoil. Now they're clearly working with Elbit. They're I don't want to use NATO bloc, or I'm just going to use Western aligned countries. They are starting to see that they don't have time and that they don't have the security that they thought they had.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is really starting to show, because you start to see Europe, especially with Poland and Finland, they're putting troops on the border. You see, obviously, Belarus, they're being more friendly with Russia. Obviously, Ukraine is still fighting day in and day out, and Sweden being accepted into NATO. So, I mean, they need to spend. And I think, and again, I don't want to make everything political, and I'm sure you watched it, but Davos, and Jamie Dimon specifically at Davos, not Karp. But
he admitted Trump was right about everything.
Correct. So that's what I wanted to talk about. Whether you like the guy or not, is they have to spend money to defend yourself. And America, and that's us people, the United States of the world, we cannot police the entire world at a elite, sophisticated level anymore, because there's so many, I don't want to use the word insurgents, but there's so many pockets of quote unquote bad people all across the globe that other countries need to step up and pay. And whether that is supplying more tanks or it is more software, they have to do more, because it is not fair for us as the taxpayer to continue to foot the bill, but more importantly, not get the results. It's one thing to foot the bill and everybody is safe and secure and we have global prosperity, because ultimately that's what mankind should be. Everybody should be growing and getting more prosperous and living in a peaceful world, but we don't live in that utopia. So with Palantir, they're trying to build that world. Obviously, that world will never happen. I don't believe in our lifetimes, but I think they are starting to see that those countries, they're going to spend more, and it's going to be partially on software with Palantir. I don't know if we're going to get a massive increase in international spend. I think people will be surprised, though. I think the UK is starting to spend. I think we're starting to really see that. NHS has been awarded. They do a lot of work with the UK Royal Marines and Air Force. That's going to continue to grow. I think you're going to see a lot more spend in Japan and South Korea. So they're going to spend. And Trump was right, and Biden and all of them, they knew that they had to spend more. It just, they didn't want to make it a message to the public,
right?
Which is fair. And to people that are like, it is an election year. It's going to be a really, really ugly couple months on the media. Some of it's going to be fake. Some of it's going to be real. I just encourage everybody to try and find real material and get your opinion off of that. And, I think with how crazy and chaotic the world is, and specifically the Middle East, it is Palantir's time to shine, because if open conflict, and I mean real open conflict with Iran is, ongoing, I don't think, I'm pretty confident the United States and our allies are going to win. Yeah. But I'm pretty confident, though, that Palantir is going to be a major component of that. And they need to prove time and time again that they will step up to the plate at the mission and do it. And that's why they have not left Ukraine, whether we have been paid one penny or $1 million. And that's why we're assisting Israel. Granted, Israel economics is much different than Ukraine. They have money, they have an economy, their jobs are still, Ukraine is fighting, it's a completely different country. So there's a reason why I think they will get cash and money from Israel, for their partnership. The interesting part will be is how long does this, call it, operation of just Israel go on? because they're serious about going after Hezbollah, that's in Lebanon, and not Netanyahu, but a gentleman who's like under a Netanyahu who could potentially be his successor if Netanyahu's thrown out, who was not as hardcore as him, but now is like because he's scared.
Right.
People are scared. And he said Iran is a legitimate target.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, if you go, if you speak to old soldiers in the 80s, 90s, and even current ones, I'm sure, there's one soldier group that stands above the rest, and that's the Israelis. And they will be outnumbered, but they will not lose. And guess what? If you keep fighting them, we will continue supporting them, the US, the UK, the other countries as well. Here will be the threshold that connects it all. So it's going to be a really crazy 2024.
It's really interesting as you say this, and we can end up on this. I was just thinking, this thought just came into my head randomly. How much would an Afghanistan, an Iraq, a Sweden, a Finland, how much would they love to have their own, a company that was incubated in their country that was a company like Palantir? I mean, it just got me thinking, how much would every country in the world love to have a Palantir that is built to defend their country, their democracy, their values, and the United States somehow got lucky enough for us to have our own Palantir, with the CEO saying our mission is to protect America and the West. I mean, how grateful could you be as a country that has that,
I know we spoke about it, people taking their freedoms for granted, and Palantir is a company that goes right into that shoe. But if you actually, I don't know if you know, but if you recall, but I want to say maybe 8 months into the Russia-Ukraine war, Russia launched their own Palantir. It's literally, I forgot what, I think it's actually called Palantir.
Really?
Or it's called Foundry. Like I'll have to dig it up. They literally, it is a copycat bad version of Palantir. And I know it's a bad version because they're getting absolutely destroyed still. So they would love it. And this is, and right what you said right there is what Karp spoke about in his last, public speech. 95% of the great AI tech is going to be squeezed, and I think he said 80% of it is already in the United States. And it's because we are the only country that is free thinking. You want to build an artificial intelligence company? Go for it. How you go about it, as long as you stay in the confines of law and order, no one's going to come for you. Yeah. And if that means you develop the absolute greatest product in the world, like Apple, we can use them because, Fortnite's suing them, all these people, they're like, dude, screw you. We made the absolute best product in the world. The reason you're reaching all these people is because of our product, the App Store. And we're going to see that with Palantir because that is what the ultimate goal is. They're creating the product. It's going to be all in the DoD. And they're going to say, pay up, pay up, pay up, pay up, because this person is using this, in Afghanistan because of our product that you deployed it on. And we're going to see that also in the Foundry marketplace that I'm really hoping this year we get some real traction on, because Jacob's solution is just on fire right now. I mean, I thought they were an order company only. I am shocked.
No, it's exciting, dude. I mean, like, and the Swedens, the Finlands of the world, they don't have their own Palantir. So then the next best thing, as you said, is they're going to have to pay up. And quite frankly, it's better to pay Palantir like 500 million over 10 years versus try to hope some random kid in Sweden at 23 years old has the intellect to be able to come up with what Palantir has come up with and then go on the journey to get funded and build like this whole 20-year thing that Palantir has done. It's done. And now it's time for people to pay up because the random kids and the random startups in those countries are not going to figure it out. Not in this.
You figured it out. The Fortune 500 CEO has not figured it out yet because he's sitting there and he's saying, I don't want to pay 500 million. I want that as my bonus.
Right.
So, it's going to happen. I think this year it's going to really take off. I think the seeds are really, really there. I think we're going to see some flowers bloom. I think 25 is going to be a really, really fruitful year because just, if 60 billion is the target in Karp's mind, that means the stock's got to double from here. And I don't think it's just going to double tomorrow if they land, a contract with, I don't know, Lay's potato chips. I don't know. They're going to have to pull in significant growth, and it's going to come.
Let's end on this. Give me a fun one. Give me your price target. End of year, January 2025, January 28th, 2025. Where's the price?
What are we right now? 16.
We're at 16. I'll do one too. I mean, look, I'd be very happy if by the end of the year we sustain about $23. If we get to 23, I would be very happy. I know that's not the number everyone wants to see, but I'm being realistic. I think 23 would be pretty cool.
I think anywhere above 25 is a true realm of possibility. I mean,
that's 50 billion market cap, basically. You and me are in the same range, 45 to 50 billion.
I legit look. Anything can happen. You know, God forbid we have an absolute stellar year where $30 on December 31st.
No one will be complaining.
An absolute catastrophe happens and we go to 23. I mean, it happens. So I mean, I think we'll be in that $23 to $30. I think 25 and above is legitimately in target.
I agree.
It will be good. I think a lot of it'll be very interesting to see though what happens once they win Titan. How does the stock react? That I think is
that's my big thing. That's why I said 23, because I think we can win contracts and do well and have momentum. The problem is the sucker keeps getting sold off because the market's like, yeah, but you know, the reason Nvidia is not selling off is because the growth is so sustainable and accelerating. The market's pricing in the forward growth and they're giving them the premium now. I don't think the market sees that growth yet for Palantir. So as you said, they're really going to have to put up or show up for us to sustain 25 to $30 if that happens.
Yeah, and I think it's possible because I think they're going to capture their fair market share this year. I think they're going to quote unquote make us happy. I think they'll surprise Wall Street to a degree because I think it's fair to say we're a little bit more on top of the stock and the company than they are. Not all the analysts, most of them.
Right.
I think we're pretty much ahead of them as it relates to Palantir. I mean, you know, it's going to be very interesting to see because it's a very volatile stock. You know, I think just generally just pulling out of thin air, I think the stock usually moves like 15% every earnings, up or down.
Right.
So,
right.
You know, and some days it will, if you remember when we were at 7, we went from like 7 to 10 to 12 to 4, and we've never been back.
Yep.
So like it's just kind of very volatile. So I wouldn't be surprised if that February 5th earning comes and let's just say they absolutely knock it out of the park. They kill it. They give unbelievable guidance. You know, they completely, you know, blow everyone's expectations. They guide for, you know, $2.5 billion, whatever it might be, even more. You know, I don't think it's out of control. You know, if let's just say we're $18, you know, the day going into earnings, we could be $22 right then and there.
Yeah.
And we can be at that 25 by Wednesday. Like it's just a volatile sucker. And then add on to S&P, Titan, there's a lot more positive catalysts than negative. And it'll be very interesting to see how the analysts, you know, price the stock because they're accumulating. But do they want it to go?
Right. Sorry, you just froze for a second. Yeah, I agree with you. I think the analysts are accumulating. I think the price that Jeffries thing was stupid, dude. The $13. I think that was absolutely, he got instructed to do that. So we'll see where it ends up.
It's good to have friends with big pockets and power, right?
I love it. All right, Adam. Thank you so much. Adam's Twitter is in the description of this video. I'm going to put it in the chat as well. His Discord as well, that I actually just joined this morning as well, is there. And that is the main Palantir Discord in the entire community. That's in the chat. So I would definitely recommend joining it if you were interested in the world of Palantir, get daily updates, good community. And yeah, he'll be on the channel probably after earnings. We'll have you on and discuss everything that happened.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy it. I think the Chiefs are up right now, so looks like they're heading to the Super Bowl.
17-7. Still have another 20 minutes on that.
The fact that 228 people came here versus that game, that just shows you how dedicated this community is. Honestly.
You know what? I'm convinced they just don't like Taylor Swift, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Adam. See you guys. Have a good one. Good night.